The Wood Creek community in the suburbs of Massachusetts displays particularly beautiful scenery during seasonal changes. Especially when spring arrives, the tulips and daffodils scattered throughout the residential area bloom all at once, making everyone forget the harshness of winter. Janet Collins was hurriedly finishing her coffee in the kitchen, illuminated by the morning light. "Emma, you'll be late for school," she called toward the stairs while stuffing real estate documents into her briefcase. Janet was busy every day as a well-regarded real estate agent in the area. "I'm already dressed, Mom," said 10-year-old Emma as she came running down the stairs. Her golden hair was tied in 2 ponytails, and her uniform blouse was neatly tucked into her skirt. "I have a science test today. Thanks to Dad helping me on the phone yesterday, I'm totally prepared." Janet smiled and stroked her daughter's head. 3 years had passed since her divorce from Michael, but he was still fulfilling his responsibilities as a father. Concerned that he could only spend weekends with his daughter due to work, Michael frequently called during weekdays to talk with his daughter and help with homework. "Dad told me to tell you. He says, good luck," Janet said as she handed her daughter her lunch box. Though busy with daily chores and work, she always attended Emma's school events and took pride in her struggles as a single mother. The doorbell rang, and Janet glanced at the clock. 7:45, who could it be at this hour? "Good morning, Janet," her mother Carol stood there when she opened the door. She was dressed in perfect makeup and an expensive tweed suit. "I stopped by for breakfast." "Mom, you should have called," Janet said as she invited her mother in. "I was just about to take Emma to school." "Well, in that case, I'll take her," Carol beamed.
Can you imagine making $10,000 a month just from YouTube, all from home? That's exactly what I did with Reddit stories. No face, no voice. Check the link in the description if you're curious.
A full smile at Emma. "Would you like to ride in Grandma's new car?" Emma looked at her mother somewhat hesitantly. Carol was kind to her granddaughter, but sometimes her manner of interaction seemed distant. In family conversations, Janet felt that while her mother gave material gifts, she somewhat lacked genuine warmth. "Thank you, Grandma, but I'm going with Mom today," Emma politely declined. Carol's expression stiffened momentarily, but she quickly composed herself. "I see, that's too bad. Another time then." Since losing her husband last year, Carol had begun visiting her daughter's family frequently. Thanks to the assets inherited from her wealthy husband, she had no financial worries and could spend time on hobbies and socializing. Just 2 weeks ago, she had given Janet the luxury car her late husband had owned. "By the way, how's the car running?" Carol asked as she moved to the kitchen. "Very well. Thank you, Mom," Janet answered with gratitude. "But you didn't have to give me such an expensive car." "Nonsense. You're my daughter. Besides, I have another one." Carol waved her hand, changing the subject. "By the way, have you heard from Michael? He came to my house last week. He helped me when my sprinkler system was malfunctioning." Janet was a bit surprised. Michael hadn't mentioned visiting her mother. "No. I didn't know that." "Oh, he didn't tell you?" "He was very kind," Carol's voice had a slightly boastful tone. "And he's such an attractive man. It's really a shame you divorced." Janet felt somewhat uncomfortable with her mother's words but tried not to show it in front of Emma. Carol had been unusually kind to Michael after the divorce, and sometimes Janet felt her mother showed more interest in her ex-son-in-law than in her own daughter. "Emma, let's go," Janet said, trying to change the subject. "Mom, will you be home tonight?" "Yes, although I'll be out when Michael comes to pick up Emma," Carol said casually. However, Janet felt something odd about her choice of words. How did her mother know Michael's schedule? On Friday evening, when Michael stopped by to take Emma for a weekend outing, Janet had a brief conversation with him at the front door. While Emma went upstairs to get her things, Michael suddenly became serious. "Janet, you should be careful," he said in a low voice. "About what?" She was confused. Michael was about to say something, but when he heard Emma coming down the stairs, his expression changed. "See you Monday. I'll keep a close eye on Emma." Janet watched them leave, unable to understand the weight of his words. On Saturday morning, with the fresh May breeze coming through the window, Janet picked up the keys to the car her mother had given her. She was planning to go shopping for the weekend, but something had been bothering her since last night. When she checked the car in the garage, she noticed the gas gauge was clearly lower than she remembered. She hadn't used it yesterday. "That's strange," Janet frowned. This wasn't the first time she'd felt something was off. Last week she had the same feeling, and the seat position had been slightly adjusted. At that time, she thought it was her own mistake due to fatigue, but this time something was clearly wrong. When she decided to check the battery condition, it was abnormally drained, as she had suspected. And it had only been replaced with a new one 3 months ago. Feeling anxious, Janet decided she should go to a specialist shop while the car was still running. While Mike Morrison was inspecting her car at Morrison Auto Repair Shop, Janet sat on the sofa looking through real estate documents. However, she couldn't concentrate. Michael's warning words kept coming back to her. "Miss Collins," Mike came out from the workshop. There was a look of confusion on his face. "I found something unusual." Mike took her under the car and pointed to a small black box attached to a gap in the chassis. "This is a tracking device. Some high-end cars have them as standard equipment, but this one was added later. Someone deliberately installed it." Janet's blood ran cold. "Can you remove it for me?" "Of course. But when you find something like this, I usually recommend contacting the police." Janet thought for a moment but shook her head. "Not yet. I need to investigate first." After having the tracking device removed, Janet thought about who might be monitoring her while driving. Why? The first thing that came to mind was a client who had been involved in a dispute during the divorce. There might have been someone dissatisfied with a real estate transaction. Or Janet suddenly felt a chill. Her mother's face flashed in her mind. When she returned home, Michael's car was in the parking lot. He was playing with Emma in the yard. As Janet got out of her car, Michael told his daughter, "Go play inside for a bit," and walked over to Janet. "What's wrong? You look pale," Michael asked with concern. Janet hesitated but told him about the tracking device. Seeing Michael's expression harden, she asked, "Did you know?" Michael took a deep breath and quietly said, "There's something I need to tell you. But not when Emma is around." That afternoon, while Emma was at piano lessons, the two sat facing each other in the living room. "Don't you think Carol has been acting strange lately?" Michael began. "My mom. She has changed a little since Dad passed away." "I think it's more than that," Michael continued, choosing his words carefully. "She's been approaching me beyond the normal relationship between an ex-mother-in-law and ex-son-in-law." Janet's eyes widened in surprise. "What do you mean?" "She's been contacting me frequently for the past 6 months. At first, it was helping with the garden or house repairs. But gradually, it changed to personal invitations. Asking me to dinner or to go to movies together." "Mom did." Janet's voice was hoarse. "I've been turning her down, but recently she's become more aggressive. Last week, when I went to her house while you were at work." Michael faltered. "She made clearly inappropriate advances." Janet was speechless, dizzy with a situation she could never have imagined. "I should have told you right away, but I didn't know how to convey it," Michael said apologetically. "Also, Carol seemed, it was frightening how she might be plotting something against you or especially Emma." At that moment, the doorbell rang. As they looked at each other, they heard the sound of a key turning. Yes, Carol had a key to the house. "Janet? Are you home?" Carol's voice came from the entrance. When she entered the living room, she seemed surprised to see Michael for a moment, but quickly put on a charming smile. "Oh, Michael. You're here too." "Carol," Michael greeted, trying to appear calm. "Mom, do you need something?" Janet tried to maintain her composure as much as possible. "I just stopped by." Carol approached a shelf with photos of her son. "Where's Emma?" "She's at piano lessons." "I see." Carol looked at Michael. "Michael, actually I have something to discuss with you. It's a private matter." Janet couldn't hide her agitation. "What kind of consultation? Is it something I shouldn't hear?" "A woman's secret," Carol chuckled. "I'm kidding. It's just about a new investment, and it's Michael's specialty." While showing an apologetic expression to Janet, Michael responded, "Just for a little while." As the two moved to the kitchen, Janet felt uncomfortable but decided not to interrupt their conversation. By the time Emma returned from her lesson, Carol had already left. While preparing dinner, Janet asked Michael, what did she want to talk about? "It wasn't about investments," he answered in a low voice. "She told me that divorcing you was a mistake. And she wanted to meet with me without Janet knowing." That night, after Emma went to bed, Janet stopped in front of her daughter's room. "Hey, Emma. Has anything unusual happened with Grandma recently?" After thinking for a moment, Emma answered, "Grandma sometimes waits near the school. She just watches me without talking to me." "It's strange, isn't it?" A chill ran down Janet's spine. She immediately called Carol. "Mom, have you been going to Emma's school?" "What are you talking about?" Carol's voice was completely calm. "Why would I do that?" After hanging up, Janet stared into the darkness outside the window. Sunday morning, Janet woke up early. Sunlight streaming through the window brightened the room. Yesterday's conversation with Michael and Emma's words weighed heavily on her heart. While making breakfast, Janet thought she needed to take some action. Emma appeared in the kitchen in her pajamas. "Good morning, Mom." "Good morning, sweetheart," Janet smiled, stroking her daughter's hair. "What do you want to do today?" "I want new sneakers. The school field trip is coming up." "Sure. Let's go to the mall," Janet said. Going shopping might help them escape the heavy atmosphere in the house for a while. It would also be an opportunity to check if someone was really tracking her while she was out. On the way to the shopping mall, Janet checked the cars behind her several times through the rearview mirror. She didn't see any suspicious vehicles. Feeling a bit relieved, Janet turned on the car radio. Emma's favorite song was playing, and her daughter started humming along. Janet joined in singing, temporarily forgetting her anxiety. "Mom, when we get to the parking lot, can we park near the shoe store?" Emma requested. "Sure thing," Janet signaled and entered the large parking lot of the shopping mall. Despite it being a weekday afternoon, the parking lot was quite full. She found an empty space and slowly parked the car. The moment she turned off the engine, Emma tilted her head. "Mom, do you hear that?" "Hear what?" "A strange sound, like tick-tock." Janet held her breath for a moment. Indeed, there was a faint but regular sound. She tried to appear calm, but fear was rising inside her. "Maybe it's the sound of the engine cooling down." "No," Emma shook her head. "I've heard it before. Sometimes since Grandma brought the car. But today it's louder." Janet's heart started racing. Michael's warning, the tracking device, and now this strange sound. Everything was starting to connect. She took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Emma, wait a moment. I'm going to check outside the car." "Is something wrong?" There was anxiety in Emma's voice. "It's okay. Probably nothing." Janet forced a smile and unbuckled her seatbelt. "Lock the doors. I'll be right back." Janet got out of the car and looked around. Shoppers were coming and going in the parking lot, creating the scene of a normal Sunday. She first opened the hood and checked the engine compartment but found nothing unusual. Next, she crouched down and peered under the car. There, her eyes caught a small black box attached to the underside of the car. It was clearly different from the tracking device that Mike had removed earlier. Janet's hands trembled. It didn't look like a tracking device, it seemed more dangerous. She had once seen a feature on local news about explosives. According to the expert's explanation at that time, improvised explosive devices could sometimes be planted in such small boxes. "Mom?" Emma was watching her from the car window. An anxious expression was on her daughter's face. Janet stood up, pretending to be calm. "Emma, come out of the car." "Slowly, that's fine." "What's wrong?" "There's no time to explain." "Please, come out now." Emma opened the door as told and carefully got out of the car. Janet took her daughter's hand and moved to a spot a little away from the car. People around them didn't notice, busy with their shopping. "That black box, it might be something dangerous," Janet explained quietly to Emma. "We need to call security or the police." However, calling the police would make it a big deal. If her mother was involved. Janet hesitated. Right now, her daughter's safety was the top priority. She made a decision. "Emma, wait just a little longer." Janet approached the car again and carefully observed the device. It was attached to the body with magnets. She took a deep breath and quickly but carefully removed the device. The box was surprisingly light and fit in the palm of her hand. She momentarily considered reporting it to a security guard she saw nearby, but if her mother was involved, it would bring shame to the family. Besides, she wasn't certain if it really was an explosive. She looked around and headed for a nearby trash can. Hiding the device in her pocket, she pushed it deep into the trash can with a natural movement, as if disposing of a used tissue. There, Janet exhaled and returned to Emma. "It's fine. It was just a loose car part. I fixed it." "Really?" Emma had a half-doubtful expression. "Of course. But just to be safe, let's take the bus home today." "I'll come back for the car later." Janet put her arm around her daughter's shoulders and headed for the mall entrance. "Come on, let's go buy your sneakers." After finishing shopping and returning home by bus, Janet immediately called Michael. She explained the situation and asked him to go get the car. Though surprised, Michael agreed right away. "Did you contact the police?" Michael asked. "Not yet. If Mom is really involved." Janet choked on her words. "I understand. But this is beyond ignoring now. Someone's life might be in danger." "I know," Janet sighed. "But until I can say something for certain." That evening, while Emma was doing homework, Janet was watching the news on TV in the living room. She usually didn't watch the news, but today she was curious if there was any information. Suddenly, the screen changed, and the words, "Breaking News," appeared. This afternoon, an explosion occurred in a trash can near the parking lot of Northside Shopping Mall. Although there were no injuries, minor damage was caused to surrounding facilities. Police have begun an investigation, suspecting that an explosive device may have been planted. As the announcer's voice continued, Janet's body froze. The scene shown was exactly the trash can where she had disposed of the device that morning. Her hands clutched the remote control, and cold sweat broke out all over her body. If you have witnessed any suspects or have any information, please contact the police emergency line. With trembling hands, Janet put down the remote and leaned back against the sofa. Fear and guilt overwhelmed her. That device had been real. Her judgment to try to neutralize it had been wrong. If someone had been injured. The phone rang, and Janet nearly jumped. The display showed "Mother." She stared at the phone for a while before finally picking it up. "Janet, are you watching TV?" Carol's voice was strangely calm. The explosion at the mall. Didn't you say you were going to the mall today? Yes, but a different mall, Janet lied. She tried desperately to keep her voice from shaking. I see. That's good. Carol's voice seemed to mix relief and disappointment. Anyway, be careful. There are a lot of dangerous incidents these days. After hanging up, Janet looked out the window. She could see someone sitting in an unfamiliar car parked across the street. She quickly closed the curtains and leaned her back against the wall. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears. This was no longer a coincidence. Someone was trying to kill her. And that someone might be the person she had trusted the most. That night, Janet could hardly sleep. Staring at the dark ceiling, terrifying possibilities appeared and disappeared in her mind. The next morning, after taking Emma to school, she called her company and took time off, citing illness. Back home, Janet sat on the living room sofa and picked up the phone with trembling hands. Her finger hesitated over Michael's number. The thought that she shouldn't involve him conflicted with the fear that she couldn't handle this alone anymore. Michael? When he answered the phone, Janet's voice trembled involuntarily. There's something I need to talk about. Can we meet today? What's wrong? Michael's voice was filled with concern. I can't say over the phone, she said, anxiously looking out the window. Can you arrange for Emma to stay at a friend's house? Of course. Let's meet during lunch break. At our usual place. In the early afternoon, Janet was waiting at a small cafe in the city. This cafe was a place she and Michael used to visit often when they were married. On a quiet weekday afternoon, the cafe was quiet and perfect for a private conversation. When Michael came in, he immediately noticed something was wrong with Janet. What happened? He asked quietly after ordering coffee. Janet told him everything about yesterday's events, the suspicious sound in the car, the device she found, and the explosion in the trash can. As she spoke, her hands wouldn't stop shaking. I'm glad you're safe, Michael took her hand. We need to report this to the police. But there's no evidence, Janet said quietly. And, if Mom is really involved? There's no choice anymore, Michael's voice was stern. Next time, you or Emma might be the target. Tears welled up in Janet's eyes. I can't believe it. Why would Mother? Let's make it clear, Michael said, as if he had made up his mind. Let's meet Carol directly and find out the truth. Directly? Janet was surprised. That's dangerous. It will be fine if we go together. Let's meet in a public place. Michael took out his cell phone. I'll call her. Tell her we have something to discuss, and let's meet at a nearby restaurant. Sooner than expected, the three were sitting face to face at an upscale restaurant downtown. Though it was a weekday afternoon, about half the seats were filled with business lunches. Carol was dressed perfectly as always and took an elegant sip of wine. I was surprised to be invited by both of you so suddenly, she smiled. Is there something special to discuss? Michael exchanged glances with Janet and quietly began, Carol, let's be frank. What did you do to Janet's car? Carol's expression froze for a moment. But she quickly composed herself and put on a puzzled face. What do you mean? Yesterday, there was an explosion in a trash can at the mall, Janet said in a low voice. I removed a device that had been planted in the car and threw it away. What a terrible joke, Carol laughed lightly. I would never do such a thing. Stop it, Mom, Janet's voice trembled. You've been monitoring me all along, haven't you? Installing tracking devices, even coming to Emma's school, why? The smile disappeared from Carol's face. She slowly put her napkin to her mouth and looked around. Are you planning to have this conversation here? Anywhere is fine, Janet retorted. I want to know the truth. Carol took a deep breath and lowered her tone. You don't understand anything. I was just trying to protect you. Protect me? By planting a bomb. That was. Carol stumbled over her words and suddenly stood up. I'm going to the restroom. After she left the table, Michael placed his hand on Janet's shoulder. She might be trying to escape. Let's follow her. When they stood up, Carol was already heading for the exit of the restaurant. They hurried after her. Out on the street, Carol was trying to hail a taxi. Mom! Janet called out. Carol turned and looked at her daughter's face. There was sadness in her eyes, mixed with something else, anger. Fear. You took everything from me, she suddenly spoke. That man, my life. What are you talking about? Your father. Carol's voice rose. He promised me everything. But after you were born, he only had eyes for you. Janet was at a loss for words. Michael stood in front of her, facing Carol. Carol, calm down. It's not too late. Let's go to the police together. Police? Carol scoffed. I haven't done anything wrong. I just wanted to show Janet what it feels like to have something taken away, like she did to me. How could I have taken anything? Janet pleaded with a pained voice. I'm just, your daughter. Yes, my daughter, there was bitterness in Carol's voice. The perfect daughter. Daddy's favorite. He gave everything to you, not me, his love, his attention, and finally his inheritance. That's a lie. Janet cried out. Dad loved both of us. He was calling your name until his last moment, tears welled up in Carol's eyes. Not me, you. At that moment, police sirens sounded, and 2 police vehicles stopped in front of them. Michael had secretly reported it. As the officers approached, Carol suddenly seemed to regain her composure. Oh, the police. What for? I haven't done anything wrong. Janet looked at Michael. We don't have evidence, she whispered. Actually, we do, Michael answered in a low voice. For the past few weeks, I've been recording her approaching your car with surveillance cameras. And I also found order forms for tracking devices in her mail. A few days later, police investigations uncovered materials for explosives and records of purchasing multiple tracking devices from Carol's house. Her computer also contained files recording Janet's behavior patterns and search history about how to make explosives. Carol was arrested and placed in a specialized facility for psychological evaluation. The evaluation revealed that she had been suffering from long-suppressed jealousy and delusional disorder, requiring treatment. After telling everything to the police, Janet went to pick up Emma. She still couldn't find the words to explain to her daughter. We won't be able to see Grandma for a while, she finally managed to say. She's sick and needs treatment. Emma looked up at her. Did Grandma try to hurt us? Janet was surprised at her daughter's insight. She was confused. She didn't really understand what she was doing. That night, Michael came to Janet's house. After Emma went to bed, the two sat on the porch and looked up at the starry sky. What are you going to do now? Michael asked quietly. I don't know, Janet answered honestly. But for Emma's sake, I have to keep moving forward. Michael took her hand. You're not alone. I'm here. Janet felt secure for the first time. The days of fear were over, and now the time for rebuilding would begin. It wouldn't be easy, but at least the truth had been revealed. Thank you, Michael, she whispered. Without you. He interrupted her words and smiled gently. You don't need to think about that. All that matters is that you and Emma are safe. 1 year later, the flowers in the Wood Creek community were announcing the arrival of a new season. Mom, look. Emma proudly held up a drawing paper she had brought home from school. The teacher says she's going to put my picture in the exhibition. Janet smiled at her daughter's work. A colorful family portrait. There were three figures: Janet, Emma, and Michael. That's wonderful, Emma. The past year had not been easy. After Carol's incident, Janet suffered from guilt and confusion for a long time. Her mother being confined to a psychiatric facility had a significant impact on both Emma and Janet herself. They both received psychological counseling and gradually healed their wounds. Michael had been by their side the whole time. At first, he was just a support, but as time passed, their relationship became intimate again. 3 months ago, Michael moved close to Janet's house, and now he often showed up for weekday dinners, not just weekends. Sorry to keep you waiting, Michael came out of the kitchen. Wearing an apron, he held a salad bowl in his hands. Dinner is ready. As the three gathered at the table, conversation flowed naturally. Events at school, stories about Michael's work, Janet's success in real estate. The ordinary, happy time of an ordinary family. I'm going to visit Mom this weekend, do you want to come? Janet asked Emma. Carol had been transferred to a state-specialized treatment facility 6 months ago. Emma thought for a moment before answering. Yes, I'll go. I want to show Grandma my new drawings. Repairing the relationship with Carol was a more difficult process than imagined. For the first few months, Carol refused to acknowledge her actions and continued her delusional behavior. However, with appropriate treatment and medication, she slowly began to accept reality. According to the psychiatrist, Carol had been suffering from untreated delusional disorder for many years, which was exacerbated by her husband's death. Her actions were not excusable, but they were also the result of illness. On Saturday, the three visited the treatment facility. Carol was waiting for them on a bench in the courtyard. She was wearing a simple white blouse and pants, not her usual perfect makeup and expensive clothes. Her face showed signs of fatigue, but there was a gentleness in her eyes that hadn't been seen before. Janet, Emma, Michael, Carol smiled at each of them. Thank you for coming. Emma approached a bit hesitantly, but on her own, and showed her drawing. Tears welled up in Carol's eyes. It's a very beautiful picture, Emma, she gently placed her hand on her granddaughter's shoulder. Can I display it in Grandma's room? Emma nodded happily. Michael took Emma to a spot a little distance away, creating time for mother and daughter alone. Mom, how are you feeling? Janet asked quietly. Getting better, Carol answered honestly. Every day is a struggle, but I'm trying to face what I've done. Janet held her mother's hand. Complete forgiveness would take time. But the first step of healing had already begun. It's okay to take it slow, Janet said. We're family. Cherry blossom petals danced around them as mother and daughter sat quietly together. The past cannot be changed, but the future can still be rewritten. Repairing damaged bonds is not easy, but with true affection and understanding, it's not impossible. On the way home, Emma asked in the car, Mom, can we be happy again? Janet looked at Emma in the back seat through the rearview mirror. Then she placed her hand on Michael's hand on the steering wheel. We're already starting to be happy, Emma, she smiled from her heart. Day by day, little by little.